as a much bigger Week 2 game than typically you would get in an NFL season?
I don't think the players look at it as a bigger game than normal. I think they might be a little more fired up because it is the Cowboys and they haven't beaten Dallas at home in a few years. But that's one thing that hurt them last week. Jason Kelce was saying yesterday that he was a little too amped up, a little too fired up in the game against Atlanta, and they didn't really settle down or calm down until the second half. So I actually think that's one thing they're going to try to make sure they're even keel and they're not, too amped up for the game, because that's something that hurt them Monday night in Atlanta.
Good point, Josh. I went over to PhillyMag.com and saw your all-22 on the secondary struggles. And, what are some of the things that you saw there? Because, Byron Maxwell, it's not a great thing when Isaiah Jenkins' names get mentioned in the first week of the season, when you're hearing Bradley Fletcher and Kerry Williams comparisons. That is not a good spot for your $63 million man. Specifically with Maxwell, what was inside some of the struggles that he had on Monday night?
Well, one of the things, particularly with his technique, was when he was in press coverage, he didn't really shock Jones and get a good hit on him as well as he wanted to and as well as he should have. And that allowed Julio Jones to get a clean release. And Julio Jones is obviously one of the best receivers in the NFL. If you let him get off the line of scrimmage without much of a hit, he has the size, he has the strength and the speed. He's just going to get to the point on the field where he wants to, but you have to disrupt him at the line of scrimmage, and that's particularly one area that Byron Maxwell was not happy with his performance on Monday.
Now, a lot of people panicking about him. When you watch him on the All-22, when you see some of his technique issues, is he a guy that, I don't want to say will ever live up to the $63 million, because I think in fans' eyes that's just really not a fair way to judge people. But do you think that he has the skill and technique to be a shutdown number one type of corner like the fans thought they were getting?
I don't think he has the potential to be a shutdown number one corner. I think he has the potential to be a good number two corner, maybe a solid number one, but he's never going to get, in my opinion, to the point where you can leave him out on an island against a Julio Jones or a Dez Bryant and just let him be. He's a guy that when he's going up against a middle-tier receiver, he'll be able to hold his own. And if he's going up against an elite receiver, I think you're going to have to give him a little bit of help, whether that's safety help over the top or another way to bracket the coverage. But I don't think that his ceiling is as high as a shutdown corner.
What about the rest of that secondary? I mean, Carroll, obviously last year, people would say, well, wait a second, the secondary wasn't very good last year. He couldn't get on the field then. He's now starting. Obviously, Boykin is gone, and, you saw a lot of Maragos out there. What does the rest of this secondary look like? Does this look like a secondary that is improved from the one that gave up 40 X plays last year?
Well, the one thing that I think got overshadowed by the corner's poor performance on Monday was how well Malcolm Jenkins played. I mean, he did an incredible job anticipating the plays, making the read, and there was one play where he read where Matt Ryan was going with the ball before he even started to throw it. He just read his eyes. He cut 15 yards across the field and broke up the pass. And he had two other plays where he was in great position. He just didn't finish. I understand the criticism of, making those interceptions and making those big plays, but just being in that position and breaking up the passes is something that you should be happy with. So the safeties, I think, are certainly much improved. The corners, Nolan Carroll showed signs of progress in the preseason, particularly in the second game when he tipped up the ball. He ran with the receiver for 50 yards and then tipped it up to Walter Thurman in the air, who got the interception. So he's shown signs of improvement. He had an up-and-down game. I think you have to give him a little more time to see just how far Nolan Carroll has come, but I would definitely be more optimistic in terms of him being better and more of a contributor than he was last year. Obviously, he didn't have much of a role last year at all.
Josh Paulin is with us, PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7, for a lot of great insight on the Eagles, especially from that Eagles-Falcons game. You broke down some of the key plays in that game. What were some of the big takeaways? You look at the score, 26-24. That game obviously could have gone either way. They missed a field goal. When you look at some of the key plays in that game, Josh, what is the big takeaway from the reason why the Eagles lost that game?
I think the biggest reason they lost the game was the offensive line play in the first half. They really had a tough time blocking against the stunts that the Atlanta defensive line was doing, and they anticipated the stunts. They knew the Falcons defensive line would, twist and just do some things to change up their alignment, but they just didn't handle that well. And that was my biggest takeaway. Was I was expecting their offensive line to be a strength, even though they had 2 new offensive guards. They had Jason Kelsey, who's one of the best centers in the NFL. They had Jason Peters, one of the best left tackles. And you just expect that unit to have a stronger start. I think they will in the second game. I think they were a little slow to adjust against Atlanta, but I think they'll have a better matchup and a better performance on Sunday.
Let me ask you this. You're watching them throughout camp, and obviously the talk about the Eagles' front seven and the amount of pressure, that they should be able to generate. You're up against an Atlanta team that I wouldn't imagine their offensive line, it comes to the tip of your tongue when you're talking about some of the top units in the league. Is that a concern, what you saw from their defensive, front seven, and then knowing what Dallas possesses on the offensive line? Is that an area of concern this week?
Actually, what concerns me isn't the front seven. It's Billy Davis. I mean, I was talking to Benny Logan yesterday, and he was saying, we had 4 guys rushing against 8. Unless you could beat double and triple teams, and Brandon Graham was saying the same thing, then they're not going to get back there. They just need to send more rushers, and that's one thing that Billy Davis, he didn't adjust until the end of the second quarter after the Falcons scored 20 points. So it's kind of, I don't want to say it's common sense, but if you only have 4 guys rushing when the Falcons only send 2 receivers on routes and have 7 or 8 guys blocking, you're not going to get to the passer. That's one adjustment that Billy Davis took a while to make, and that was the thing that concerned me the most. Was I think their defensive line is an excellent unit, but Billy Davis being slow and adjusting to that is what concerned me the most.
I'll ask you then a similar question with the secondary. A lot of people look at Williams and Bradford and really blast them for being poor talent, but they're in New England, one's in Seattle. Those are pretty good teams. Both of them are playing. It's not like they're benched out there. They're both getting on the field. So is it Maxwell, Williams, Fletcher that are the problem, or is it the scheme in that secondary that makes these guys look exposed?
I think part of it is the Eagles don't have a ton of talent and depth at corner, but I do also think it's the scheme. I mean, when I was talking to Malcolm Jenkins yesterday, he said explicitly, we need to make changes on the sideline quicker. And that was one thing that the Falcons had several big plays in the first half when they would send only Julio on routes, and they would send them on deep crossing routes or posts and get those big, X plays, the plays that go for at least 20 yards, because the Eagles only had a single high safety over the top, and then they took a while to adjust to having more help back there, and that was what Malcolm Jenkins was saying. We need to make those changes quicker, and we need to communicate them into the game quicker. So I definitely think a lot of it falls on Billy Davis, the defensive coordinator.
Josh, the nickel spot, I don't think it was exposed, or I don't think Atlanta really game planned to go after. I don't know that they knew Maragos was going to be on the field. They obviously traded Boykin away. If Maragos is the guy that is in that spot, is that a concern moving forward? Teams are going to say, I'm going to look at Maragos and go after this little high. If he's playing that safety spot and Jenkins is in the slot, do you think Maragos is a guy teams are going to start to go after if he's out in the field more?
I think it's going to be tough for teams to game plan regarding how they're going to attack Eagles nickel, because it's going to change every week. That's one thing that all the guys in the secondary and all the coaches have said. It's going to vary depending on the matchup. They wanted Malcolm Jenkins on the line because, the Falcons, one thing that they do really well is move around Julio Jones and have him line up in the slot or on the outside. And so the Eagles have felt comfortable with having Malcolm out there against him and having Maragos as the third safety or the second safety with Jenkins moving up. So it's going to be tough for people to game plan, because they could do that one week. Another week, they might move Nolan Carroll to the inside as the nickel and bring in E.J. Biggers or Eric Rowe. So it's going to be tough for teams to plan against a specific player that's going to be in the nickel, but they might just they might draw up plays for their wide receiver for whoever's in the slot, regardless of who is going to be defending them.
All right, some notes on the Eagles as they get ready for the Cowboys after the loss to the Falcons. Josh Paulin and the guys over at PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. Really good insight on that Falcons game as they get ready to take on the Cowboys. Josh, always a pleasure, man.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right, Josh Paulin, everybody, every Thursday right here with really good check of the All-22 on that secondary. Check that out at PhillyMag.com. Always good to catch up with Josh, who is doing a really good job replacing Sheil Kapadia over there at Philly Mag. Mike Gill in the Sports Bash, 346. When we come back, take a quick look at fantasy football. Jeff Pasquino from FootballGuys.com. If you have a fantasy football question, text ESPN and your question to the number 89,000. Pasquino next.
If you've been looking for Pandora jewelry, look no further. You'll find it at Jared the Galleria of Jewelry. With Pandora, life's extraordinary moments become the art of you. And you'll find an amazing selection of Pandora bracelets, necklaces, and rings at Jared, including exclusive styles you won't find anywhere else.